I'd like to call this regular meeting of council for Monday, April 23rd to order. First, I'd like to adopt the agenda. Recommendation the council adopts the April 23rd, 2018 regular meeting agenda as presented. Over, please. Councilor Tripp, Councilor Ross. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Carried. Minutes. Recommendation council adopt the April 9, 2018 special Levoy camera meeting minutes as presented. Councilor Ross. Councilor Tripp. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? So carried. Recommendation council adopts the April 9, 2018 regular meeting minutes as presented. Councilor Ross. Councilor Tripp. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, moving on to our registered petitions and delegations. First one is the Boundary Country Regional Chamber of Commerce quarterly report as the subject matter. And well, are we ready? Good evening.
Thank you, Your Worships. Trying to plan starting something, and I see I don't have to, so we're just going to start. Oh,
Just turn it on the side.
On the side, there's a
Great.
there we go.
There you go. You're all set. Good to go.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just going to start with something else that looks like I don't need to, so I'm just going to start. I say first off, I apologize for not being able to come here on April 9th. I had an injury Sunday night. As the email that Diane got was written kind of in haste at 11 o'clock from the hospital. I did try to get as much information as I could. But I'm back, more or less, and healing well. So, I submitted this report already ahead of time. Would you like me to go through and read it anyways? Yeah.
I think it would be good.
Sure.
For the public.
So the Boundary Country Regional Chamber of Commerce is looking forward to another great year. At the end of 2017, we had 143 members. To date, we have 35 new members join, and I just joined 2 yesterday as well. So at this time, we've received over $8,000 in membership fees and expect the remaining members who have not yet renewed to do so shortly. Many of our members have seasonal businesses and renew once day-to-day operations resume. The BCRCC started the year with a well-attended chamber luncheon at the time of plate to new member, and we discussed some of our bylaws and passed some amendments. These new bylaws were filed with Corporations Canada April 4th, 2018. And while most of these changes were grammatical corrections, we did update our terms of reference to include the president, vice president, and treasurer. In March, we held our AGM and had over 2/3 of our members vote by proxy, the system that was in our bylaws to use and allowed members to vote in advance of the AGM. The proxy system ensured that we met all of our bylaws, ensured the vote was an equal representation of our members, and provided additional time to assure each vote came from a member in good standing. We had 5 nominees this year and 3 director vacancies to fill. The result was Kathy Corlett, James Wilson, and Vanessa Pavel are now in for a 2-year term. Following the AGM, we had a board meeting to vote in the positions of the board. The result was Kathy Corlett is our president for 2 years, who's stayed with me. James Wilson is our vice president. Vanessa Pavel is the treasurer. Jeff Farrell is the director of Grand Forks. Shane Aarons is still director at large, and Jason McGarver is now the director of Christina Lake, as he just moved out there with his business. Jim Nathorst, the BOT director, resigned after many years of service, and we wish him all the best. The Greenwood Board of Trade has not yet appointed their new representative. I did run into Susan yesterday, and I think it's going to be their new vice president who's just come on. In early April, we hosted a volunteer fair. The event was designed for our nonprofit organizations to set up a booth and recruit new volunteers. We had 8 nonprofits take part with over 60 attendees. We're expecting this to be an annual event. And in fact, the week after we would have held it is the National Volunteer Week. I just couldn't book the space that week, so we booked it 1 week early. We're planning to host Movies in the Park for 2018 and have already secured 2 sponsors, 4, and have another 6 who have stated their intent to be sponsors as well. This year we are including a vendor market, allowing members to set up for free. Non-members will pay a small fee. The vendor market at the Movies in the Park is in line with our community engagement initiative, and the Movie in the Park has historically attracted more than 300 community members and feel this is a great opportunity for nonprofits, handmade crafters, food vendors, and businesses to gain some brand recognition, sell their wares, and recruit new volunteers. The BCRC will continue to support and attend the same events we do every year, including the Greenwood Founders Day, Gallery 2 wine tasting, the Grand Forks softball tournament, the GFI, Community Futures Business Excellence Awards, and the 2019 shopping spree. In addition, we continue to support other events as requested and continue to work with the Downtown Business Association with their events. As per the comparative report provided, we are on track with our budget for 2018. I'd like to highlight the line item office administration includes wages, rent, utilities, phone and internet, subcontracts such as website and the recording secretary, accounting and legal fees, bank charges, professional development, office supplies, and membership dues. The membership dues that we pay out are for the BC Chamber and the Canadian Chamber. We're looking forward to moving to our new space, 125 Market Ave, which has more storage space, a large boardroom for both our boards and our members to use, and we expect to move in May 1st, 2018. On behalf of the BCRC and our members, thank you, Mayor Conrad, for your continued support and approval of our 2018 fee for service. Do you have any questions from Mayor or Council?
Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor Conrad. Thank you for bringing such a comprehensive report. I'm glad to see this, and your financials are laid out very well and very understandable, so I really appreciate that. And your report was very comprehensive as well as to what the Chamber is doing. I just had one quick question here on the net income there. I see you do have a $13,000 585 deficit there, but I understand that you are carrying a fairly substantial cash carry forward from previous years. Is that correct?
So the Chamber of Commerce has always had a sustainability carry forward. So they've always maintained 10,000 for Grand Forks initiatives, and I'd have to look at the numbers again, but something like 12,000 for boundary reaching carry forward as well. So that was built up starting in 2012 when they started getting funding and knowing that we'd have to move out of Community Futures and start paying office rent and move from a paid position that Community Futures was covering to being a full-time paid position. So we knew that we would have to kind of move forward, which is why last year there was a deficit, and that was planned. It had been planned since the beginning of 2012. So while we do have a bit of a carry forward cash amount, this $13,000 deficit or difference net income here is showing that's only until the end of March 31st. We've received most of our funding now from, in fact, we're closer to $10,000 we've got membership funds. The regional districts have kicked in their funding, and we received the fee for service from the City of Grand Forks. So we don't have an overdraft or anywhere to, our bank account. We have to have cash to keep moving forward, yes.
Very good, thank you.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Kendra. This is the kind of reports that I think council needs, and this is just excellent. I have to commend you on that. And with regard to the deficit, this is only the first quarter, and so I'm not getting too excited about seeing a red balance. That will change as the revenues accumulate. So, but yeah, no, this looks very good, and thank you for that.
Mayor Conrad, can I just respond?
Go ahead.
I'd just like to say that it is the first quarter, and keeping in mind in the first quarter we have some of our largest expenses come out that time, so we pay our membership fees and dues, and some other like our subcontracts and that. They're paid in full in one time in January, including accounting and legal. We usually don't get their invoice till the end of December. It's paid out in January. So some of our largest expenses come in that first quarter. Throughout the rest of the year, we tend to receive more revenue and fewer expenses, I should say.
Any other questions? Hearing none. Thank you again. Excellent report.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to our next item, which is the Grand Forks Downtown Business Association fee for services matter.
It's on the top. There's a button that turns it on the side, and then the other button's on the
Front,
top.
that gray area.
Just talk.
Oh, there.
There you go.
Oh, okay, there we go.
I don't have my reading glasses on, so I don't know what to expand.
Thank you for having us. This is my first time giving a report to council. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Amber, and I own the Work and Play, and I am the chairperson of the DDA. The Downtown Business Association's objective is to promote economic activity and encourage a vibrant downtown. Last year, we started the Heritage Sign Project for downtown. The participating businesses will have heritage plaques describing what their building once was and wooden signs to identify their businesses from the sidewalk to present a unified downtown. We promoted the Grand Forks Black Friday event. It is held 1 week ahead of the US Black Friday to promote the opportunity to shop local first. We also held the successful Fright Fest event. The event brought many people to the downtown core. This year we plan to complete phase 2 of the Heritage Project. We had many more businesses than we had anticipated that wanted to participate. We're working on the addition of a walking tour brochure to highlight all of the businesses and that heritage that's there. And we're also looking into Bluetooth speakers for the downtown for events. And these will be used for like mood music, MC, other events. And this year we have a new addition to Fright Fest. We'll be having a pumpkin growing contest to see who can grow the largest pumpkin.
Councilor Tripp.
So if you just hit that, that's great, thank you. Thank you, Mayor Conrad. Yeah, it's good. You've been doing some interesting and exciting things, and I was especially interested in the heritage signs. I know when we talked about that last year for Canada 150, I think the plan was to have had like a passport situation, but understanding that things didn't get completed for very good reasons. I'm just wondering what sort of plan B with that. Were you going to do a passport kind of thing, or was it now just going to be just a brochure, or what might be happening now on that?
So it's a brochure as well as a passport.
Okay.
So it'll be a threefold. It'll give a short description of each building and a map to follow, as well as we've had some information that the high school is looking at developing an app so that we can have the little QR. There, QR on the signs, and then they can scan them and it'd give them more information on each site, as well as we could then have more and more buildings that would have more information.
That sounds like a wonderful development. Thank you for sharing that.
Councilor Hammond.
Yeah, it was a good presentation. I was just wondering if you wanted to elaborate for the gallery, your collaboration with the council and your roundtable discussions with concerns of downtown and what you're working on with that as far as traffic calming and security and just some of the discussions that have come up.
Thank you. So we had a meeting, roundtable meeting with the city to discuss some issues that come up downtown for the businesses. And one of the issues is the safety of pedestrians downtown. We're seeing a lot of fast-moving vehicles on 2nd Street. There's quite a few accidents that happen on the intersection of Market and 2nd. It's quite busy. It's really hard to see. People are pulling out quickly, trying to get out there, and we find that it's a safety issue. So we brought that to council to see if there could be a resolution on that, as well as we discussed wayfaring signs for downtown to drive traffic into our downtown core and show that we're down there, as well as we talked about parking. We seem to have, it may not be a lack of parking, but we seem to have a lot of business owners or residents parking in the prime parking spots all day long. So we were looking for a resolution to the lack of parking for customers.
Thank you.
Duly noted.
Any other questions? Hearing none. Thank you once again. For the my apologies, I didn't mention this at the beginning of the meeting. Councillor Butler will be here. She's late, so she will be present. So, okay, moving on to. He wants to run. Moving on to our reports, questions, and inquiries from members of council. The written reports of council. Recommendation that all written reports of council submitted at the April 23rd regular meeting be received. Councillor Ross, Councillor Tripp, Councillor Crawford.
Yeah, obviously I missed the deadline, but I would like to, under here, council reports, just put in a notice of motion for repainting the rainbow sidewalk with better lasting paint. So I'll bring that up at the next meeting.
Councillor Thompson, Councillor Tripp.
I also would like to give notice of motion that I will be bringing forward a resolution with respect to the provincial government's denial to the RCMP for an additional 130 officers throughout the province. I had a lengthy discussion with the UBCM president, Wendy Booth at the AKBLT. I will be working with UBCM staff, which she has put me in contact with, to develop the resolution and bring it forward. And when should council resolve to accept that resolution, then it can be forwarded to directly to the UBCM for consideration as a late resolution at the September convention.
Councillor Tripp.
Thank you, Mayor Connor. Yes, I wasn't able to put this in obviously as well because we just got back from the AKBLG on Friday, but I just wanted the rest of council to know, just in case you didn't, those who weren't there, and then also for the general public, that the 3 resolutions that we put forward were all approved, and they were actually ranked. And I found out from Director Russell this afternoon when we were on the nature walk together that at least one of those resolutions has made it into one of the 7 top ranking, possibly even more. So obviously those resolutions are important for the rest of the communities in the AKBLG.
Okay. So all those in favor of receipt? Carried. We have item 6B, another notice of motion from Councillor Hammond on the agenda.
Is it a notice of motion or a motion?
No, it's a motion.
Yeah, because she had a notice last time.
Yeah.
So
It's
under
the
the
real deal.
under the recommendation is whereas Grand Forks Downtown Business Association, known as the DBA, is concerned about excessive speeds and safety in the downtown core, citing several accidents and near-miss accidents on downtown roads. So the resolution is, our recommendation is therefore be it resolved that council direct staff to install 4-way stop signs at 72nd Avenue and 2nd Street and at Market Avenue and 2nd Street. Be it further resolved that council directs staff to reduce the speed limit to 30 kilometers per hour within the boundaries of 72nd Avenue on the south to 75th Avenue to the north and 6th Street from the west to Riverside Drive on the east, excluding Central Avenue. Councillor Hammond, Councillor Ross. Discussion, Councillor Tripp.
Thank you, Mayor Conrad. Yeah, again, I was speaking with some people in the community about this resolution because they had seen it come forward. And one suggestion that was made, and I'd like to bring forward for council to entertain because I thought that was a very good suggestion, was instead of having a 4-way stop, could we consider having a roundabout?
Not this
Too expensive.
It's not a thing.
I don't know how expensive they are. that might be something that staff could, apparently, I was told that they would be cheaper than four-way, than
There's not enough
the four-way stops.
You have to change the corners. of the
Manager
sidewalks.
development engineer, go ahead.
We have been looking into some, and there may be some options for different types of roundabouts. There was concern about trucking traffic and or the fire truck, but there are options out there for different types of roundabouts, different sizes. And we're doing a bit of research on that. And they can be anything from just sort of a painted area with rumble bumps to, you know, a full-on roundabout. So there may be some options for some intersections, but we have to be some time to look into it.
Councillor Ross and Councillor Thompson.
I just might need a point of information here from staff. Don't we have to approach, and I just going back on the discussion we had earlier, MG, motor vehicle,
Yeah,
Ministry of
Municipal
Mobility,
Transportation Infrastructure.
before we, because this has direct staff to install. I'm just proposing perhaps an amendment that council directs staff to approach Modi about the possibility of installing a traffic calming or a four-way stop signs or other traffic calming mechanism at the global.
Prior to proceeding, you mean? That's
Yeah.
to our CAO.
Your worship, Councillor Ross is correct in the fact that we did do a little bit of digging and we do have to do some conversations with Modi because we're that close to the arterial highway and pretty much most of Grand Forks is. And so a suggestion is that where the resolution requires that the council would direct staff to research the installation of four-way stops. That way, that'll perpetrate the report to see exactly, you know, what needs to be done there and what we're able to do, and then we'll be coming back, of course, with some of the costing factors as well and the time frames.
So I guess
And some of the other
has to
recommendations,
accept-
Yes.
once we receive the information from. Perfect.
Yeah.
Councillor
Well, our
Thompson?
mover has to
Yeah.
accept it.
Okay, sorry.
No, I would get to speak to the.
Yeah, because, go ahead, Councillor Thompson. You have the floor.
Thank you. I support the four-way stops. I think they're much more safe than a roundabout. We have two roundabouts, you know, at one at Second and 72nd and one at Market and Second. That's going to be really confusing, but I know our daughter is in Abbotsford and they have a number of four-way stops, which I think works much better, and particularly going on to Second, because people do come over that bridge or from the highway, and they're going like the proverbial was after them.
Four-way stops work better.
So, yeah, four-way stops work much better.
So we have a motion for amendment, and do I have a second?
I'm going to talk about.
Wait,
So
second.
I would
Talking
agree,
to the amendment.
I am in agreement with the friendly amendment to have direct staff to get in touch with Modi.
How Diane had worded it
Yeah.
away.
Yeah, I would not be in favor of going with roundabouts because it doesn't make it more pedestrian friendly, and that's the whole point of having the stop signs. I would really like to see the stop, four-way stops, where people have to come to a complete stop, because in a roundabout situation, people are still trying to walk across, and it's actually wider, that they've got better chance of getting hit, I think. But I would like to see it done in a timely manner, because we're coming into our tourist season, we're coming into spring now, and we're almost in May. So I would like to motion that this be done as quickly as possible.
Councillor Tripp?
Thank you, Mayor Conrad. Yeah, I still think that giving the roundabouts some thought, and maybe if staff could do a little bit of study on those to find out whether or not they actually do produce just as safe an environment as the four-way stops, and or traffic, how they're going to be moving traffic. Because I know down in the Lower Mainland, in White Rock, in Langley, in a number of the bedroom communities, suburbs. Four-way stops are utilized in many different intersections, and they seem to provide very adequate traffic moving. You know, people going around, they stop. They know they have to wait for anybody who's going into that circle. They seem to be very effective. So I would just be in favor of at least staff finding out a little bit about how those would.
My question would be, does that also impact on MOTI, that they would also give us information in regards to roundabouts as well as stop? Would that also be in the information report coming from the Ministry of Transport?
Yeah, they have a manual, of course, for this type of thing, and it's based on the North American manual, so it's for the States and for Canada. So they have specs for the number of vehicles per hour and the number of certain types of accidents, what type of traffic calming features work best in which situation. And they did caution that if you do something, say overkill, that compliance goes down. So if you install maybe 2 four-way stops, the compliance may go down, and if compliance goes down, then your safety goes down. So it has to be well thought out, and we should be looking at the specs that they provide.
So basically, that's all encompassed in this amendment, which we will be getting. Thank you. Councilor Crocker?
Yeah, there are places in the city where we could and should have roundabouts. This stretch of road doesn't make it as easy. And the nice thing is you can't pick up speed. So it works along with the 30. Like I just spent a lot of time in Qualicum. If you want to talk about a screwed up city to drive around and park in, and yet with their four-way stops you can go anywhere you want. You just can't find parking.
No.
Right. But it's super efficient.
Okay, Councilor Hammett?
So I just want to know if, are we all in agreement with for the result to reduce the speed limit to 30 in the downtown core? Because that's part of the same resolution.
But I think it still comes under the amendment for MOTI, right?
I believe your worship, but we would encourage us to check and make sure
Yeah.
that we're not bound by anything from MOTI. So
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah.
a matter just to confirm with them.
Seeing as we're going to them anyway, we must get all our T's crossed and our I's dotted to be on the safe side, rather than implement something at this stage which we'll have to retract.
Right. Okay.
Okay. All those in favor of the amendment? Anyone opposed? So carried. All those in favor of the amended motion as presented? Anyone opposed? So carried. All right, moving on to verbal report from the RDKB, which would be myself. I have no report at this time. The meeting was very short. The only thing I will mention briefly is the fact that we will be having a meeting with BC Transit in, I believe it's May the 2nd, and we're discussing further ongoing situations between Greenwood and Grand Forks. Go ahead, Councilor Thompson.
Thank you, Your Worship. When we were at AKBLG, we were talking with some of the regional directors, and they were talking about Insider 468.
Yeah, that's an app that I think was presented to the city, was it not?
I believe Director Russell spoke
Yeah.
about that briefly, I think, last time.
Yeah, it also had to do with community futures also.
Okay, so that's to do with tourism and economic development and stuff?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Yeah, they would be probably forwarding it through community futures to the city. Okay, so there's no motion on this one because before that, proceed with what I just stated. So we'll move on. Recommendation from staff for decisions. 8A, temporary use permit for tourist commercial special events camping from Development Engineering Services. The recommendation is council grant a temporary use permit for tourist commercial / special event camping with special event and recreational activities to Cannabis Music Festival Limited on land zone small lot residential R2, legally described as Lot 1, District Lots 380 and 520, SDIYD, Plan KAP 64274. Mover, please. Councilor Councillor Ross, Councillor Crosby. All those in favor? Any discussion? Oh,
Sorry.
go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you. Just a bit of background. Thank you, Your Worship. As per our legislative requirements, there's public notice given on that, and we wanted to ensure that council received the feedback at the discussion point for this. So, just in summary, council showed a strong interest in the department going over and above and making sure that there's a lot of notice out there. And so staff went to the nearby developments on the north side and posted notices. There's the 2-week advertisements, of course, in the newspaper. The Facebook page was actively promoted, and there was a bit of feedback that came in. So in terms of the feedback that we got, let's see if I can this one. So we had one phone call from a neighboring property owner who wanted to make sure that there was some security in place and that there wouldn't be an impact on his property from people crossing over to Extra Foods. And so there was, just kind of some feedback on site management, but no opposition to the temporary use being granted. I also had a visit from the director of the BYLAWS Board of Directors to ensure the limited impact and in particular making sure there wouldn't be a placement of a gate on the northwest corner off of 25th Street, and also ensuring that site security would make sure there wouldn't be thieves visiting during festivities. So there's some really good feedback there, not opposition, but more just making sure that the event was well run and that kind of thing. In addition, there was one conversation actually with one of the neighbors at the cul-de-sac who was coming in for a planning career, and it's like, oh, you're here because of the letter, and they're like, oh no, we're here because of our fence. So that was kind of the measure of the feedback that I got there. And then this is just a summary of the feedback on the Facebook page. So in our analytics, we can look at how many people. So as of just before the meeting, 2,531 people were reached. So basically this went on their newsfeed, probably saw it. And then in terms of the clicks, there's a lot of engagement that actually happened. So 347 clicks directly on the link, other 431 clicks where they would click to see the whole photo and see what the photo was of. A lot of people went through the website to read the whole story. There's 52 likes, 28 on posts, 24 on shares, a love, a wow, and the comments, nothing came in that I saw that was negative. The only, and I might ask our manager, communications officer to, the high post is the only kind of negative feedback we saw, and that might just people who saw it shared multiple times from other people. Like, so let's say they saw it from the city feed and then someone else shared it, they might hide it at that point. But that's, I felt that there was a lot of people reached and a lot of people talking about it due to this type of engagement.
Thank you. Councillor Tripp.
Thank you, Mayor Conrad. Thank you for that feedback, Graham. I was really interested in what the neighborhood will think about it, and it seems like they're okay. Was the security piece part of the temporary use permit that wasn't in there? So is that something that could be put in there, that there has to be some kind of security as long as it's being used for the purposes of the county?
I believe that we can have certain conditions as part of the temporary use permit. I think that we should discuss with the proponent and ensure that this fits, and might not be at every event that is required, but for a major event like this potentially, where they're off-site for part of the time. So I think we can get feedback from what the planned security is, and then share that with council and make the recommendation that something's in place. They can certainly see that in their operation.
Any other questions? All right. Hearing none, all those in favor? Anyone opposed? So carried. Moving on to item 8B, subject matter license of occupation and zoning compliance for Grand Forks Wildlife Association Rifle Range from, again, Development and Engineering. Recommendation is the council receives the report on the requested license of occupation, and further, that council direct staff to prepare the license of occupation for the Grand Forks Wildlife Association for a rifle and trap range on the property legally described as portion of District Lot 495 shown on Plan B 2093 SDYD excluding plans B5146, B5147, B6314, 7267, 27381, KAP 61265, KAP 64475, KAP 677245, and KAP 67367. Mover, please. Councilor Hammond. Mr. Thompson. Any discussion? What you missed? Gladly. Councilor Hammond.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if there's someone here from the Wildlife Association. When they presented a couple of weeks ago, I talked about noise issues for residents on Riverside Drive and the expansion of residential on Riverside Drive, where the slag piles are coming down and the noise is getting higher. So I suggested some sort of berm or tree planting or something to buffer the sound, and I just want to know if anything has been discussed amongst them and if they have a resolution for that. I see later, further down in our agenda, we have an actual petition from residents on Riverside Drive asking us not to allow them on, asking them to, inviting them to find another location. But I just want to know if they've made any, had any discussions regarding sound reduction, noise reduction.
Were you looking for some of the comments from the Grand Forks Wildlife Association?
We need
Well, we need a
unanimous
motion for
resolution.
you to speak.
I'll make
Yeah.
a motion.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Okay.
Put on my other hat.
Yeah.
So, John McNamara, I'm Secretary for the Grand Forks Wildlife Association. And I wasn't present at the meeting when Frank Osman made the presentation, but we haven't had another regular meeting since that I was present for anyhow. But I know that in the last year, we've actually altered our hours of operation of the range to try to minimize the impact on the minimize the impact of the operation of the range. I don't know if that's something that was brought to council's attention at the time.
Councilor Hammond and Councilor Butler.
My understanding is it's not just the Wildlife Club that's using it, the RCMP use it for training as well, and they're using it all day long. So can you address that, or do you give them permission? Do they need permission to use that rifle range, or do they just automatically have access to it?
Councilor Hammond, from our Development Engineering, Mr. Watt will speak on that subject.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, the department reached out to the RCMP just to confirm the use, and in the past, there was organized training days where they would book it. They haven't done that in the last 3 years, but individual members of detachment and of border services are both regularly access it for training. So it's not a booking all day thing, but it's part of their training regimes, 100%, as individuals.
Does that answer your question, Councilor?
Well, I'd just like to address that because we do have training days booked by not just RCMP, also Canadian Border Services, and other enforcement branches where firearm proficiency is required as part of their carrying out their duties. So that's part of the operation of the range. And that's supposed to be booked. I'm not the range director, so I'm not entirely sure if there's other people going out there using their professional firearms outside of those training days. And I don't know that they're specifically supposed to be doing that or not, but I do know that we have training days, and we've actually had a request from, I believe it's Canadian Border Services, for a training day. So that's part of the operation, and obviously on those particular events, there would be say probably a higher volume of use than when you just have people going up there to sight in their rifle or whatever.
Councillor Butler, then Councillor Tripp.
Yeah, so just to clarify the hours of operation for the range, and also I know one of the concerns was the rapid fire and the higher caliber that make the bigger boom. And I'm just wondering if there's some, I know there's no good solution here to make the residents happy and to make the gun club happy, but if there's some sort of compromise on those areas that could happen to try and mitigate the issues.
So I believe we went to a 9 a.m. Start, start time, and then the end of the day, depending on the time of year. We're coming into the summer, we have trap shooting on, I think it's Thursday evenings we're going to be doing it this year, but there's a bit of shooting. I'm not sure what you mean by rapid fire.
Yeah. So like, so you're typically open from 9 in the morning till sundown, or depending on the daylight hours? Is that
So the daylight hours do affect us in the wintertime. You know, it's dark by 4:30, so there's no use
night
at that
vision
point.
shooting?
No. And then when the daylight hours are longer, people are able to get up there after work. And, you know, so we have trap shooting one night a week.
Councillor Tripp, then Councillor Hammond.
Thank you, Mayor Conrad. Thank you for clarifying some things for us. I too was going to ask about the hours of operation, knowing that the gun range is not used just all day long, every day of the week. Also, too, do you have any idea of just what the use of the gun range would be? I know you're looking at something else there.
Yeah.
What the use of the gun range would be in terms of it being a seasonal activity. My understanding is that road probably isn't very accessible during most of the winter months, and when would basically the highest, the peak uses of the gun range be? Would that be like sort of just pre-hunting season, spring and fall, or can you give us some idea of just what the usage of the range would be?
Well, I can tell you it's not a lot of fun to go and trap shoot in -25. So you're right in that when there's a lot of snow on that road going up, there's less use in the January, February, March timeframe, depending on the weather. The peak use would be in the fall and in spring, and then again when it's 40 degrees out, you're not going to find a lot of people trying to sit out there, sweat and, heat up gun shooting. So what I was looking at here, whoever was it passed to me, is a picture of the sign. The note is shooting to be done only between 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. Obviously, daylight hours permitting. So, whoever passed me, thank you. The one thing that I did want to mention as well is that I don't know if anyone's actually done a sound decibel reading from the riverside side of the river when shooting's going on, because there's I know like noise level that during the day when people are active, cars are driving, the ambient noise from a truck driving down the street is probably a lot louder than the sound of a gun from across the river shooting in the opposite direction, because our range is also positioned so that we're shooting away from that direction, so the muzzle noise is actually going towards the hill.
Councillor Hammond.
Yeah, so it's pointing towards the hill, but it echoes back, it reverberates back, so it would have been buffered by the slag pile in the past. I'm just wondering, Does the Wildlife Association have a lease on that property with the city? Like, does the city charge them a rent or an occupancy fee on an annual basis? And if so, like, what do we charge? And then secondly, I'd like to know what remediation plans can be put in place to buffer the noise, and if this can go back for consideration so that they can come up with a plan.
I don't believe that, I'm not sure who the lease is with. I don't think it's a city property there. Because we just signed a lease for, I think it was 40 years, a year or two ago. It's, I think Frank had all those documents with him when he was here last time, and like I said, I'm not the range director, so I don't know the specific details. I've read it, but it was my direct responsibility, so I didn't absorb the details with total clarity.
And that question did come up regarding the noise factor with the resonance of the sound, and that would be very hard to buffer. That discussion came up last time also, but to our CEO regarding the
Yeah,
lease.
Your Worship, there's no lease on that piece. I know that when our planning department did the checking on where it was, we actually went back to the letters patent, and it actually was one piece of property that was regional district, and the reason why it's over a little bit on the city property now is because when they did the boundary expansion back in 1980?
66.
Oh, 66. It just said, okay, we've just kind of creeped over to the edge, and so the grandfather piece is that it used to be regional district until we changed the expansions, and so there is no money that changes hands or anything, so.
Just to follow up to that, how much actual land is on city property as opposed to regional district?
Very small portion.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I believe I actually have a 0.291 hectares, so a third of a hectare, about 2/3 of an acre kind of thing. It's just the portion, they use the road, of course, that crosses the city property, and then it's just the portion where the buildings and truck range site are, and then the regional district area, which is Crown lease, that's the 40-year one that was spoken of. They've had that continuously. There were actually building permits provided by the regional district to the club back in 1979 for finishing up some of the buildings, but it was kind of just an understanding at the time with the city that this was an activity up there, it wasn't formalized. So that's why with their requirements for their shooting clubs and shooting ranges regulations, they've got to have tenure and compliance with zoning bylaws, and that's why this has come up.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson and Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think that it's a very small portion of the rifle range that is on city property. So, you know, if the council wanted to be denied this request, there would be nothing to preclude them probably from trying to move and not relocate, but just to move their portion of the operations off of the city lands.
That is correct, because if we move what's existing there now fully onto our property that's covered by that lease, we're not in the city of Grand Forks, so we don't actually get affected by that. We're just asking for the range approval to, we need to have permission to be where we are.
And continue as you are.
Yes, yes.
Councillor Butler?
Yeah. We're just wondering with the license of occupation, if a time limit could be put on it, because as we do start to develop more to the edge of city limits, this might be something that the next council might want to revisit. Is that ever done with the license of occupation?
I don't know that anybody that would want to develop property next to a rifle range. So
Well, Riverside's already done it, so.
I think that that's kind of a moot point.
Councillor Hammond?
I see the need for them to stay where they are. I mean, they've been there forever, and it's mostly regional district property anyway. But I do have some concerns because we have some residents that we also look after that have got some concerns about the noise. And I think we're caught between a rock and a hard place. And I'd like to see a resolution that keeps everybody happy. I'd like to see where possibility of exploring, some landscaping or some trees being put in that can buffer the sound so that it doesn't reverberate back and echo as much. It might dampen the noise a little bit, but
Not like
something to
resonate off the mountains. It's not gonna happen. Okay, Councillor Tripp, then Councillor Butler, and then Councillor Ross too, and then we're gonna call the question.
Thank you, Mayor Conrad.
We got 3 kicks to the bucket.
Okay. I think we get 3 chances to speak, right? I think Mr. McNair has brought up a really good point about the decibel level of the guns up there. I know the larger guns are pretty darn loud, and that is a bit of an issue. But our noise bylaws really says that excessive noise can't occur between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m.
Yeah.
And you certainly fall well within the limits of the noise bylaw. But I hear Councillor Hammett's concern about some of the neighbors on that other side, and having been up there myself, I'm just wondering, might there be a way, because the noise is emanating, the sound is going out, but the noise is also emanating from the hut there too. Would there be a way to put any additional soundproofing materials in the actual hut there? Maybe on the roof or on the back of it that might mitigate some of the sound?
We can investigate that. I'll bring that up at our next meeting, which I believe is May 11th. But that's something that's going to be maybe an ongoing, what we're asking for in terms of the license occupation is for our range approval that,
That you need.
And
You need that now.
And the ongoing attempts to mitigate sound. I don't know how successful those other things will be, but we can definitely take that to the meeting and see what options there are there.
I was not. No, you've spoken more than once and I haven't spoken at all. And you may not speak again after everybody else has spoken once.
Actually, in response
Times
to
are changing, and I know for myself, I used to live near a rifle range, and when I was in my yard with my family and I heard gunshots going on, I did find it really disturbing with my little children. And times are changing in terms of people's comfort with the sound of gunfire reverberating. Can we even come to a compromise where on Saturday and Sunday, when people are home with their families, that you go from 11 in the morning till 3 in the afternoon? People tends to be sleeping in, they're having late breakfast, they're being outside with their families. 11 till 3, come to some kind of compromise, and then during the week, go from 9 till 7. I don't know why somebody has to be at a rifle range at 9 o'clock at night. Just can't we have a discussion, meet part way, where you look at your hours and say, what can we do to accommodate the growing number of families that are moving into the community that aren't comfortable? Because those are the conversations we're having, those are the letters that we're getting, is the noise. And it doesn't matter if they're decibel, it's what is making that noise, which is upsetting people. I know I don't like it. It upsets me, it bothers me. It reminds me of terrible things that are happening in this world. Even though it's recreational, hunting, guns, I understand it. It's what it represents now in our society, and it does upset people. So can we talk about reducing your hours 11 till 3 on weekends, Saturday and Sunday, and then from 9 in the morning till no later than 7 at night during the week? Maybe even shutting down earlier on Friday. So, would just like to propose that as something for you to go back and have a discussion with, so that we can move part.
I can take that back and we can have a discussion. I can't commit to anything because I'm one person. It's a club. Just say from the perspective of someone who works during the day too, that we also work in for people who that's their recreation. That's when they have an opportunity to participate in that as well. And I can't commit to what direction the club would take on that, but I can certainly bring that up at our meeting.
Yeah, like you had mentioned that you would also take back regarding insulating potentially the shed. So as long as there's a collaborative approach towards this, I mean, for us to forbid this, you just have to move your stuff and you're not even going to have to come to the city. So we have to bear that in mind too. Of course, yeah, go ahead.
Your Worship, perhaps just talking to you planning, maybe a solution right now would be for council to kind of table this for the minute. I think that the best piece to do is to have some conversations with the neighbors, conversations with the gun club, and get some solutions with both of them. And so, when we can develop this license of occupation, we can actually put some of those terms in there that would satisfy both parties to some degree.
Are you on any kind of timelines here? Because for some reason I vaguely remember there was some kind of timeline criteria because you had to get something from the province, I believe it was, in the legislation.
I don't know what the exact timeline is. Frank also would be the best person to answer that question because he's the range director and meets with the provincial firearms officers that gives us range approval. And there is a time element because we've had a range inspection, we've moved berms, we've done things to bring the range up to standard. But the one piece that we need because of the historical land use on that property and the
I remember.
I don't know, shifting boundaries and part of operation is sitting on city-owned property that we need permission from who we're occupying to operate on an as-is basis. If we don't have that, then we have to move parts of our operation onto our solely occupied the property that we have a lease on for 40 years. And as you said, if we did that, then this discussion is...
That was the reference that I was saying, because I remember they did that conversation with Mr. Usselman at that time, where there was something in regarding to getting your license and the whole bit that had on that element. I just wasn't sure if there was a timeline impacted on that too.
So there is a timeline, and I'm sorry, I don't know what that is.
So possibly, so that's possibly a better idea than to just send it back.
Your Worship, maybe rather than table them, because I know it kind of makes it sit kind of in nowhere land, is that maybe council does this subject to some amicable agreement to the timelines within the license, or...
Yeah, that would be my recommendation.
You could probably issue a temporary or a short-term license of occupation with conditions and consultation with, with the neighborhood and with council.
Just so that they could continue to proceed in case there are any, critical timelines involved, so that they don't lose their. So it sounds like a big deal.
Yeah, I'll make it, because that's what the point I was trying to make earlier, when you all weren't letting me speak and get my question answered, that was my point. So I'll make that motion right
to
now.
make as well, because we do have some things that we need
I was
to-
asking for staff if we could have a temporary use permit to allow them to operate for the moment, and then moving forward.
Okay, so you're making that motion, Council
Yeah.
Brother? Perfect, we have a second. Okay, so everyone in favor of the amendment? You're amending that motion, right? Okay, so all in favor? Anyone opposed? Carried, so all those in favor of the amended motion as presented? Anyone opposed? Councilor Ross is opposed. Okay, the motion's carried. All right, moving on to item 10A, information items from the Boundary Musical Theater Society. Subject matter request for establishment of a permanent home. The recommendation is that council direct staff to forward a copy of correspondence to the Community Futures, who is championing a community center study for the area. Do we have two? Yes, we have two resolutions. We'll deal with them
Your
separately.
worship, these should be separate.
Yeah. May I have a move, please? Councilor Draw. Discussion.
Okay, can I just have the motion read out, please?
Okay, that council directs staff to forward a copy of correspondence to the Community Futures, who is championing a community center study for the area.
Yeah, just forwarding correspondence.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's not appropriate.
All those in favor?
That's not.
Anyone
Is it
opposed?
in?
So carried. And the second portion of that is that council, recommendation, the council may further determine to direct staff to research the feasibility of a city area to consider storage of Theater Society property with the understanding that the society would require their own insurance responsibilities. May I have a mover, please? Councillor Thompson, Councillor Tripp. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Carried. 10B. Brian Noble, correspondence regarding the Grand Forks Wildlife Association gun range location. The recommendation is that council direct staff to advise the writer with regard to the public process should the matter go to a zoning change process. May I have a mover, please?
No, you just read it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The recommendation. Your CEO.
Your worship, in light of the last
I know.
conversation here now, so, as there really is no zoning change process because of the grandfathering in, so I think just the receipt of information is like the appropriate to this.
Councillor Tripp, seconding.
Second and then comment?
Go ahead.
Councilor Thompson.
Yeah, Councillor Thompson.
Right,
Councillor
I'm
Tripp.
seconding,
Yeah.
but I would also like to discuss. Would it be prudent to notify these people who have written in here of the decision that we just did with the gun range, and so they know that at least we're looking at a temporary use situation with some more research on mitigating the impacts of the sound of the guns?
He was just sitting right here. Mr. Noble just left. Yeah. He was here, so he
Oh,
heard the
so
whole
he heard it.
conversation.
Okay, great, okay,
Okay.
thank you.
All right. So there's nothing, just for receipt. Okay, moving on to bylaws. Bylaw 2046, 2018 tax rates from our Chief Financial Officer. The recommendation is that council gives first three readings to 2018 tax rates, bylaw number 2046. May I have a motion, please? Councillor Ross, Councillor Thompson. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Carried. 11B, bylaw 2047, freedom of information and protection of privacy update from corporate services. The recommendation is that council gives the first three readings of the proposed freedom of information and protection of privacy bylaw number 2047 and further instructs staff to present the bylaw for final reading at the May 7, 2018 regular meeting. Mover, please. Councillor Thompson, Councillor Crog. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Carried. Bylaw 2048, Records and Information Management Program bylaw update from corporate services. Recommendation is that council gives the first three readings of the proposed Records and Information Management Program bylaw number 2048 and further instructs staff to present the bylaw for final reading at the May 7, 2018 regular meeting. Mover, please. Councillor Thompson, Councillor Ross. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? So carried. Bylaw number 1958, A4, Campground Fees and Charges Update, again from Corporate Services. The recommendation is that council gives the final reading to the City of Grand Forks Fees and Charges Amendment Bylaw number 1958, A4, 2018. May I have a mover, please? Councillor Thompson, Councillor Crog. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? So carried. And bylaw 2039A1, zoning bylaw, cannabis amendment from development engineering. Recommendation is the council gives first and second reading to the zoning bylaw amendment number 2039-A1. Please. Councillor Thompson, Councillor Hammond. Discussion, Councillor Tripp.
Thank you, Mayor Conrad. Yeah, at the AKBLG, we were given a presentation on cannabis regulations in BC by Lisa Anderson. She's the Executive Director of the Cannabis Legalization and Regulation Secretariat. She said that the timing for full legalization of cannabis will be mid-August to late September. She suggested that this is not going to roll out in just a full clean sweep, that it's going to take a number of months for things to get put in place, suggesting that there is a little bit of time leeway here that we have to look at our zoning bylaw. And there were two pertinent issues that came to light from her presentation that pertain to us. She said local municipalities can determine where cannabis can be smoked. For example, public consumption regulations can go beyond current smoking regulations. And an example of this is the city of Calgary. They have a cannabis consumption bylaw that restricts smoking pot anywhere in public places. Users can smoke on their own property or in their own homes only, with pretty much. They may have cannabis lounges connected to large events where people would be able to smoke cannabis separate from any place where alcohol is being consumed. And they do have fines up to $100 for breaking this bylaw. The rationale stated for that move was a number of things. One thing was that the smell of the cannabis is much stronger than cigarette smoke, and it's quite offensive to passersby or people within proximity of it. Also, another rationale that they had was that a person can't drink alcohol while walking down the street. So they felt that people shouldn't be able to smoke a joint while they're walking down the street either. And they did a poll to survey people in their community. Many thousands, I think it was 43,000 people, responded to that poll. And it indicated that 66% of voters said that smoking pot in public should be banned. So that's certainly an issue that I would like to see some thought given. Either we draft a new cannabis consumption bylaw that we could consider just exactly where cannabis could be consumed. And then the other issue that would be important for us to look at is that she said council should actually oversee the approval of the business license application process for retail sales and for industrial growing operations. In other words, all of those business license applications should actually come before council. So I'd like to see both of those things either put into the current zoning bylaw, or as I say, we can have a new bylaw that speaks to the consumption side of it, but then this bylaw would address the license application side of it.
Just have a quick question, Councillor Tripp. Did you say 66% or 6%?
66.
66%.
66%.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Garcia.
Your worship, I believe our planning department has some insight on some of the processes here.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We did consider a new smoking bylaw as part of this process, and we did ask the community about it. The input we received back was very split, and I would reiterate that just with the provincial regulation, smoking cannabis will be prohibited in parks, within 7 meters of doorways, in vehicles, around any spots that children frequent. So in terms of municipal lands, what that leaves are roads, in terms of if you're walking on a road that's not downtown or next to a public building, and of course the sidewalks attached to the roads. So we did specifically ask in the survey about that, and the reaction from the public was very split. So we did not feel confident advancing a bylaw based on that. However, that would be where we would recommend putting any further restrictions that council would wish to see would be in a separate smoking bylaw. The second issue being the business licensing. And well, the planning department will have a procedure for processing that. The provincial regulation is that in order to get the license from the province, you must have the endorsement of the local municipality. So that piece is already in place from the provincial regulation. And so I believe we need to address that with procedure, but that we don't need to put that into a bylaw, as the province has already stated that is a requirement for their licensing.
May I just clarify, just get a couple of clarifications on Mr. Gates' response? Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you. And that was a good response, but just a couple of things I'm not quite clear of. What survey was it? Was it the survey that went out, the one that we just had? Did that ask about smoking, where smoking would be allowed?
That's correct.
Okay, and you were saying it was pretty much split down the middle, 50-50? That 50% of people said they like it in public places, and 50% of people said they wouldn't?
I would have to review the numbers. There were 3 options. One was to further restrict tobacco and cannabis. The other was to restrict cannabis only, and the third being the status quo. And it was ambiguous as to which was the preferred option.
Okay. And then just the final clarification on the, you said that at the municipal level, those business license applications need to be, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it would come to council. What I'm at, it does mean that it, they would have to come to
council resolution would be required.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
With an ALR application.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Councillor Butler and Councillor Hammond. Yes.
Yeah, just to follow up on, I just heard Graham say with an ALR application, is that for the retail stores or for growing that you're discussing?
Councillor Butler, your mic.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this is the part of the regulations that haven't been fully spelled out. They've talked about the retail licensing procedure, but the production and processing is a federal regulatory piece. With the retail side, there would both be evidence of public consultation as well as a council resolution. They haven't spelled out all the requirements. And so my comment about the ALR is that their process requires council resolution and public consultation to be demonstrated. So that's what I've been hearing, is that there's a parallel there to that type of thinking, similar to like a rezoning type of thinking, you know, where you might actually have maybe more consultation required. So on the production and processing side, I think we're still waiting on more information for what their requirements are, but let's see what they are.
In your worship, also, staff is asking just for first and second reading, the note in the report is that there's going to be a proposition to extend the public engagement before the required public hearing to include an open house and additional engagement tools. So this is just the start of the process, so we can actually get into the public engagement and the public hearing process now. So this is just the first step to get the bylaw moving.
Yeah, so it's evident there's a lot of part and parcel here.
Yes.
Sorry, I hadn't actually asked my question yet. I was just doing a follow-up on Deb's question. My actual comment on this was, as Councillor Tripp had stated, the open consumption of cannabis in public places has been banned in the states. In the states that have legalized cannabis, there is no open public consumption. Like if you cross the line here into Washington, you can't just walk down the street smoking a joint. I also passed along to Council today the information that you stated from Calgary, and also the problems that have been ongoing in the Lower Mainland with the different commercial grow facilities and the complaints from residents with the smell, and that it has been they've deemed that having grow-ups in residential neighborhoods is causing problems for people that are constantly 24/7 having to smell of pot. So unfortunately, in our zoning bylaw here, we have designated to have grow-ops situated within residential areas in the light industrial section up by
James Thomason Park, and also over by the airport where there's also a residential neighborhood right next to it. So I won't be voting for first and second readings with grow-ups in residential areas. I would like to see those areas removed before we even proceed to the public process.
Councillor Hammond, then Councillor Tripp.
Okay. Yeah, I just was in response to Councillor Tripp's comments regarding consumption, and I think we're getting ahead of ourselves because this bylaw doesn't even talk about consumption. It talks about retail and production zoning. I think the consumption should come under a different bylaw altogether. So I think we're spending a lot of time spinning our wheels talking about where people can smoke it when it's not even on the table right now. I think we should just be focusing on the zoning, on regulation for retail and industrial purposes.
Councillor Tripp.
Thank you, Mayor Conrad. Yeah, I still believe it's pretty important to bring forward these issues because they absolutely are attached to this bylaw. And as we know, what often happens is we get a bylaw out there, it goes through first, second readings, and then by the time we know it, third reading has come, it gets passed, and by that point, it's too late for it to go back to public consultation for the first and second reading. So I just would like to get things right before we get too far down the road. We can't really make any changes, and we want to, this is a serious issue for our community. It impacts everybody at some level, and I just think we need to be very thoughtful about the process that we go through when we look at all of the issues. And if the zoning bylaw needs some minor tweaks or changes, I'd for sure like to see that that's going to be able to happen.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Your Worship. What I heard our CEO advise is that this, giving it first and second reading, allows the public consultation process to begin. Through, I believe, you made reference to an open house, public hearings. This isn't something that is going to be rushed through willy-nilly. This is going to take some time to get it right, and I absolutely agree that it has to be right. With regard to the consumption of the product, that's going to become later and be open to considerably more debate. So I will be supporting first and second readings and allow the process to begin.
Exactly. Our CEO.
Leadership or planning department would like to.
Go ahead, Mr. Warren.
Thank you, Your Worship. So one option that would help the extension and ensure full receipt of the public process by council is after the open house, any additional outreach efforts and the public hearing, then a full report be brought back to committee of whole level before going into the third reading so that there's that extended discussion at that point.
But first and foremost, we'd have to trigger the engagement. All right, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Councillor Butler is opposed. Motion's carried. All right, moving on to, there's no late items, so now we're moving to question period from the public. Again, may I mention to everyone, subject matter please, otherwise we will not discuss it. Lady in the front row.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Kate Simmons from the Gazette. Perhaps I'm just not recalling, or maybe it was a while ago, but can I just get a refresher on what resolutions council brought to AKBLG?
Oh, I think there's 3.
It was mentioned during one of the councilors' reports, so
Yes,
it's on the agenda.
Let's see if we can find that.
Which council?
Okay, so we asked for additional Crown lawyers and for the provincial government to appoint additional Crown lawyers.
Prosecutors.
Yeah, Crown Council lawyers. We asked for instead of, like right now, we only have a judge sitting here once a month. So we asked for bi-monthly, we asked for a bi-monthly judge to be sitting. And then the third thing that we asked for was for, there's a substantial likelihood of conviction requirement by the Crown Council that the RCMP have to put in, and we've asked for that to be dropped to a probable likelihood of conviction. So from substantial to probable, yeah.
It's coming back to me now. It was a while ago you guys approved them. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much.
This was out of 3?
That was the 3. Yeah, bi-monthly judges,
bi-monthly.
the probable likelihood of conviction, and more crown counsel lawyers. Yeah.
Any other? Go
And
ahead.
they all passed.
Go ahead.
Someone, and if they want to, but thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor Ross, if I may. Is there any concerns in terms of the discussion around the Grand Forks Wildlife Association and their hours of operation? It's my understanding that the lease they have is the majority of their range, and they lease that from the Crown, and it's a small percentage they're asking for from the city. And they're asking because it would be easier than moving it, but they also have no problems moving it. So I'm looking for your perspective, I guess, on does council feel that they may be overstepping by trying to dictate the hours of a rifle range that's not even, mostly on city land?
I don't represent council when it's my opinion. I'm just thinking times have changed since they started practicing their, rifle skills or whatever they do up there. People have moved into Riverside Drive. We have more and more young families moving here. People do have a different feeling about firearms today than they did even 20 years ago or 30 years ago, and certainly even 10 years ago. A lot of people find it more disturbing. And it may be, I don't think it's overstepping. It's just saying, we can potentially cooperate. Yeah, absolutely. But can we also move into the year 2018 and have a greater understanding or empathy towards those people in our community who aren't comfortable with the sound of gunfire? 7 days a week, it's open, and open till 9 at night, and from 9 in the morning until 9 at night on weekends. It's just like, I think times have changed, and I'm just asking them to modernize. I would like to see them modernize their behaviors, or their usage, I should say. That's it.
Thank you.
I would like that to be on their radar. I think it would be kind of them.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Any other gentlemen in the second row?
I have a comment as well, if I may. I'm Gene Cook. I agree with Councillor Ross. Times have changed. What's happened is over the years, when that rifle range was initially put in there, rifles were a lot smaller. In the mid-late 60s, when large caliber Magnum rifles came out, it's not uncommon to be able to hear a 300 mag at 1.5 miles away. So we're talking about a whole different level of firearms today than there was 40, 50, 60 years ago. For what it's worth, my perception as hers is, albeit personal, is things like rifle ranges, airports should be well out of any city limits, not anywhere near city limits. And that's something to consider. Really, personally, the other thing is most rifle ranges, or a lot of rifle ranges today, are at least 1,000 yards long. The maximum range of that rifle range is 350. So it's like a range design that was accommodated 40 or more, 50 years ago. So really a different location ultimately would be a reasonable approach. I'm not sure how that could be arranged, maybe somewhere in the regional district, but if more people come to the area and there's a percentage of shooters within the population base that keeps coming to the area, the noise is just going to get more. Is going to get louder and more of it. So I agree, times are changing. And it's appropriate to have a place like that. Other countries have different ways to deal with it. Britain, for I'm going to say 40 years, has had what's called silencers. Because of the density of the populations, rifle shooting is allowed, but you can't hear it. But this country doesn't allow silencers, or noise, sound suppressors, so we're living behind the times with what we're doing. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Gentlemen in the back row.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, councillors and Your Worship. My name is Nigel James, and I've lived in Grand Forks for 9 years. I would like to speak on the subject of the the talking about the speed limits and the intersections on 2nd Street. And what I would ask, if I may do, is write a discussion paper for your worship and for the councillors, and a copy for the manager of operations, to discuss certain potential traffic calming devices. Perhaps you remember soon after you became the mayor, it was mentioned, I mentioned it, and you said you'd like to come. When I went and spoke with the manager of operations, you'd like to come along, and it would be concerning those types of things. And also, the reason why I wrote, these are some various notes I've written on the subject, was because of, I forget the lady's name, but she was the chairman of the Downtown Business Association in about February last year. And she suggested a reduction speed limit and some signs outside certain shops, I believe. With her suggestion of reducing the speed limit, that is something that since I've been here almost the whole time, it's an obvious thing in my view that the speed limit ought to be reduced in the downtown core. There are other things that can also happen, which could be done in phases, as time permits, as monies permits, if there's any money required, and as the residents get used to slight changes and so on, then another change could be adopted later whenever a road was being repaired or something like that. I'm not sure when you're having the actual discussion on the actual 35 kilometers an hour speed limit, but the advantage of that is you're automatically going to reduce damage to people and to vehicles by 50% because of the speed reduction. That's from the laws of physics, in fact. Anyway, may I have your permission to write this paper and present it to all of you? Then you can do with it as you wish. Discuss it en masse, individually, or whatever.
Yeah.
Go ahead. It's your paper. Go ahead, sir.
Then therefore I will write it. May I, what is the time factor for when you're going to be discussing the 30K or 35?
It's going to be dependent on it's dependent on the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure.
Oh, well, if it's their decision, I guess I've got a fair amount of time.
It's their decision.
And the other aspect of that, Mr. James, is the fact that it's the enforcement factor too. It's easy to change the speed limit, but who's going to enforce it?
That's not our.
Well, yeah, but that's the way we always, that's pretty,
Right?
I mean,
There's that challenge.
we all have a choice to drive the speed limit, and we just need better signage in town,
Yeah.
and we need to get our crosswalks.
But yes, by all means, go
Thank you very
ahead.
much indeed.
Any other questions? Hearing none, we have a motion to adjourn. Councilor Hammond, Councilor Cross. All those in favor?
No, I want to stay.
Meeting's adjourned.